There's nothing funny about a climate disaster. Or is there? Because some of the things Bill Gates says on the topic are straight out of clown world. And even diehard activists must admit, Bill is a bit of a joke himself. So for your amusement, I've compiled a list of the best unintentionally funny lines from his book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. Number 10. Melinda and I had a healthy debate about how many times I could use the word fart. Cow farts aren't funny, but Bill's obsession with them is hilarious. The quote refers to a letter drafted for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill wanted to say fart often, but Melinda would only let him say it once. After that, cow farts were referred to as enteric flatulence. Bill explains that since he's the sole author of his climate book, he'll say fart as much as he wants. They're divorced now. And cow farts are an important part of another entry on this list. Bill also has an obsessive love of vaccines. So with his obsessive interest in cow farts, it's no surprise he's funding research into vaccines that reduce cow farts. Just what we need. More medicines pumped into our meat and dairy. Number 9. I am aware that I'm an imperfect messenger on climate change. My carbon footprint is absurdly high. It's funny because it's true. If he was really interested in promoting his ideas, he would have used a pseudonym, or back off and hire someone else to write it. Because Bill has zero credibility on the issue, and his climate hypocrisy might actually be hindering his cause. Well, unless his cause is to promote Bill Gates. Number 8. Reducing your own carbon footprint isn't the most powerful thing you can do. Yes, his idea is to be an activist and get other people to reduce their carbon footprints, or influence politicians to raise carbon taxes and make other policies that will compel other people to cut their carbon footprints. Taking responsibility or setting an example? No need. Number 7. By 2080, lower crop yields would cause between 2% and 10% of adults in Mexico to try to cross the border into the United States. As soon as the book was written, Biden opened the southern border, and over 2% of Mexico's population crossed the border every year. 60 years ahead of schedule, and it had nothing to do with weather. Sorry, Bill. The next quote needs some setup. Bill talks about meeting a family in Kenya that lived in mud huts with thatched roofs and farmed a plot of land smaller than a baseball field. They own one cow. They sell half the milk, leaving 1.5 liters a day for their family of 5 to drink. Then they catch a break, which allows them to buy 3 more cows, at which point they earn $4 a day selling milk, after which Bill says this gem. But if you remember the problems with cattle that I mentioned in chapter 6, you'll recognize the dilemma right away. The Talams bought more cattle, and cattle contribute more to climate change than any other livestock. Wow! Bill owns 4 private jets, and he says it is a dilemma for a family in a mud hut to own 4 cows. It's all about those cow farts.
Yeah, I'd probably have one of the highest greenhouse gas footprints of anyone on the planet. You know, my
kind of
personal flying alone is gigantic.
Number 5. If you want to do business with us, you'll have to take climate change seriously. Bill himself is running dozens of businesses. So we might conclude nobody should buy Bill Gates' fake meat products until he takes climate change seriously by cutting his own gigantic emissions. But that takes a quote out of context. Bill was actually talking about how governments solve the free rider problem. Free riders are other countries where their voters complain about carbon taxes because they don't want to pay more for basics. His list of freeloader countries is topped by Canada, the Philippines, Brazil, Australia, and France. It's a strange list. France gets most of its electricity from emission-free nuclear. And it seems harsh not to do business with the Philippines because they aren't taking climate change seriously. Number 33 on the Worldometer list of carbon emitters, with 0.4% of world emissions and one of the lowest per capita rates. And the carbon champion, China, isn't on the list. Their voters don't complain about carbon taxes because they have no voters, no carbon taxes, and complainers are thrown in jail anyway. Number 4. Bill's love of China shows in number 4. As a reason to be hopeful about net zero, Bill says, China committed to the ambitious goal of being carbon neutral by 2060. What a joke Bill made. Earlier he praised China. In 2008, China launched a $584 billion economic stimulus package, a large part that went to green projects. Another joke is most of the economic stimulus involves building power plants and factories that run on dirty coal. No wonder China's carbon emissions go through the roof while other countries are flattening it out. Funny Gates doesn't mention that. And the top 3 are classics. We're talking Monty Python level absurdity. Number 3, every bureaucrat who makes purchasing decisions should have an incentive to look for green products. What? He can't be serious. This is legalized corruption. Incentive is another term for kickback. You never want bureaucrats getting richer by spending your money. Number 2 needs some setup. In the book, Gates talks about decarbonizing the atmosphere by direct air capture. You get a giant machine that sucks CO2 out of the air, and you have to suck a lot of air because CO2 makes up only 400 parts per million. That's 0.04%. Then you bury that CO2. He calculates it would currently cost $10 trillion a year to capture annual CO2 emissions. Though he doesn't say how much energy this would take, where you would store billions of tons of CO2, or how you would prevent it from seeping back to the surface. Bill also recommends that governments charge huge carbon taxes. The carbon price could be set at the cost of direct air capture, and the revenues could be used to pay for pulling carbon out of the air. So in effect, your tax dollars are stuffed down a sinkhole. But that isn't the punchline. It turns out that Bill Gates wants that $10 trillion a year for himself. So he owns companies that will do the direct air capture. And I'm not aware of anyone who's investing more in direct air capture technologies. One of Bill's top ideas about what you can do to avoid a climate disaster is our number 1 funny quote. Try a plant-based burger. We're back to the running joke about avoiding cow farts. So here's Bill's fake meat. It's filled with chemicals, high in sodium, and costs more than meat. Navdania International produced a 23-page report warning about this food. They say fake food has a larger carbon footprint than less processed plant proteins, up to 7 times more GHG intensive. The Impossible Burger is made with genetically modified Roundup sprayed soya, leading to massive ecological devastation. Total levels of glyphosate were 11.3 parts per billion, when only 0.1 parts per billion can destroy gut bacteria, damage liver and kidneys, cause reproductive abnormalities, or even tumor. Then there's environmental damage, like polluting groundwater. One of their additives might cause weight gain, inflammation, kidney disease, disruption in reproductive cycle, and anemia. And isolating plant proteins can have dangerous consequences for health, including all these other diseases. Sheesh. And if lots of people die sooner because of all these illnesses, then they won't burn carbon anymore. And that's ultimately how Bill wants us to avoid a climate disaster.